Brokenness is a part of life that we have to deal with as human beings. Nothing is harder or more painful than broken relationships. I'm recording this segment for your Bible study on the eve of the 10th anniversary of 9/11, which is for us a very powerful and tragic reminder of the far-reaching effects, sometimes devastating effects, of broken relationships in our world. Most of us deal with broken relationships in our private world. We think of broken relationships between people, perhaps an employer and an employee, broken relationships between friends that for some reason just fall out of touch, or perhaps feelings are hurt and the friendship suffers. We think of broken relationships in families. We think of siblings who won't speak any longer, or we think of divorce, or the tragedy of a child who wants nothing to do with their parents. Broken relationships hurt. And they hurt so much because relationships matter to us, and they matter to us deeply. No relationship in our life is more important than our relationship with God. And so the broken relationship that has the most devastating consequences for us is a broken relationship with God. People from the beginning have sensed in their lives this relationship not being what they wanted it to be, or what it should be, or what they knew it could be. Is that just a part of what it means to be human? Well, we read in the Old Testament of the Bible, from Genesis chapters 3 and 4, about where this relationship went wrong, and about the brokenness of humanity's relationship with God from long, long ago. When we read about the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, it's a story about broken relationships. A broken relationship with God, a broken relationship between two people. Of course, when we read the story of Adam and Eve, we do well to read it not so much as history and for what it can teach us about something that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago, but we do well when we read the story of Adam and Eve to remember that it's a story that teaches us something about ourselves today and about every human being on the face of the earth for all time. You see, the story of Adam and Eve, and it's important to remember this, the story of Adam and Eve is really a story about us. It is our story. Adam and Eve living in a garden where God had blessed them and had given them the gift of life. One prohibition God sets forth, and the one thing they do, of course, is to break that one law that God had established from the beginning. Again, it's a story about a broken relationship. You and I understand that brokenness in our own relationship with God. Scripture teaches us that brokenness is just a part of what it means to be a human being. The church has defined this in its doctrine of original sin. That left on our own, all of us as human beings will eventually choose to go our own way and not God's way. Left on our own, we'll, all of us, make some foolish, sinful choices in life that will be damaging to our relationship with God and our relationship with one another. We believe that that's just the human condition. Genesis chapters 3 and 4 tell us something about ourselves and something about how this has come to be. It's important to read Genesis chapters 3 and 4 as our story. It's also important for us to see Genesis chapters 3 and 4 as a foundational story in the Bible. The story is certainly entertaining as we see Adam and Eve in the garden conversing with the snake. But it's important because it lays a foundation for everything that follows. You see, the rest of the biblical story is God's response to what happens in Genesis chapters 3 and 4. God's response to our brokenness. In other words, Genesis chapters 3 and 4 remind us of something we already know deep down in our heart of hearts. It reminds us of how much we need God. It's a reminder that we need God's forgiveness and that we need to model that same forgiveness for others and practice forgiveness among one another. As Christians, we believe that God's forgiveness was shown for us supremely in Jesus Christ, who gave his life for you and for me that we might be forgiven and that we might be restored in our relationship with God, that brokenness between us and our Creator might be healed. May it be so.